everyone. So this is my new book, Road Trip, a Whiskers Hollow adventure, and a lot of this was done, I came here and worked on it because, you know, it's all set in the forest and the characters drive in the trees and stuff. And I'm just going to show a little bit in case you're not familiar with the book. These are the end pages, the whole world of Whiskers Hollow, which was so much fun to create. The inside of the characters driving on the trees, and bear crashes into an acorn. So there's giant acorns. Bear's the same size as, you know, rabbit and mouse. You can see inside, you can see inside Rabbit's house. That was really fun to think about where these characters live and everything. And there's the side mouse house. Sorry.
You're asking me to share.
Yep, sorry.
Hold on.
We're going to switch cameras. Sorry. There we go. So there's inside Mouse's house. Let's go back. I'll show you the end pages. You can see the different places in the world of Whiskers Hollow. And so what we thought, here's where Donkey lives. One of my favorite pages. This is the Wobbly Bridge. And then the Thorny Tunnel, which was a lot of fun to draw. So I work traditionally. I work on watercolor paper. I ink with a fountain pen, and I watercolor with watercolor. None of this work is done digitally. Every once in a while, there's a little something that my art director might digitally, you know, tweak or take out, or, you know, but really that's like one little thing in a whole book. So it's really all done traditionally. And so we thought we would show you that. I wanted to show you some of my sketchbooks too, so we'll stay on this camera. This is just 3 of the 6 sketchbooks that I had to create Road Trip and the world of Whiskers Hollow. And so I know that I have number 1 labeled. The other 2, I don't know what order they are in, which is strange because I usually do label them. You know, just drawing the little houses and the little beavers working. Here's the Wobbly Bridge, though, which is the beaver bridge, and in the book there's actually beavers working on the bridge. So it's really funny how ideas start and do stay in the book through the whole thing. Funny that beavers were a bigger part in the beginning, drawing the little bugs and things. And then each character has its own car, and I was doing the different sizes and different cars that they go in, kind of like a lineup. I do that a lot with the characters. I have a little lineup here. This just went above my desk to make sure I had the colors right and the characters, kind of like a model sheet. I have model sheets for each of them. I actually didn't bring them to this event, but maybe I'll post some more of them. I have posted them online. I can post some more. You can see I started to come up with the characters. This is drawn on a scrap piece of paper. I teach, and for some reason I had a moment, and these popped into my head, and I drew it, and then I Xeroxed it and pasted it in here. So it's pretty close, you know. Almost these are like what they look like in the book, and they're starting to really come alive. And then it's like working on the story and drawing trees that way. And Elephant did make it into the book, so that's fun. What I wanted to find, and then I'm drawing the different vehicles that they each have, and I just want this page. And then if I go here, this was actually drawn on the path here at Highlights. I came up here for an unworkshop, stayed in the cabin, took walks, painted trees, and just came up with some of the story and stuff. This was drawn on the path, just sitting on an old bone log and painting and drawing. And then it gave me, you know, other ideas, and I was making more of a map and stuff of where they would go, and drawing some more trees, then getting more into like a style that I wanted for the book, and drawing trees while I was here. And then deciding that I wanted to show inside the houses and the tree stumps where the characters lived and stuff. So I'll just flip through a few more pages of other sketchbooks, and then we'll start to actually do a finished illustration. So I really wanted to do traditional watercolor. I've done colored inks and pastels and all kinds of other things, but not just pen and ink and traditional watercolor. So what I did is I have this little watercolor set that I carry around, and I made myself carry it around and sit and paint in my sketchbook every day. Oh, you can see here's the thorny tunnel, and like maybe a scary old tree that they would have to go through and be scared of. Here's some other vehicles and other characters. I found these great old books of old cars and just started drawing them to see what ideas they would give me. Just trying to get the mood and the watercolor and working with watercolor and the shape of the different things. There's Donkey. He really came to life on these 2 pages. For some reason, him hanging his sign saying junk this way, because he collects junk and sells junk, like Elephant, really, and then his scooter. And then I was like, oh, that's him, and, you know, and then Bear with his truck, too. See, so the characters are really starting to come in here. And then I went and did other characters that didn't necessarily make it, but, you know, Elephant does have that pickup truck, tow truck, and Mouse does drive that car, although you don't see it in the first book. We are working on proposing a second Whiskers Hollow book. There's actually a billy goat in the second story, so I actually thought we might sketch him a little bit today, trying to decide if Donkey should drive his old jalopy or his scooter in the second book, but we'll see. So,
George had a question about what kind of
oh, yeah.
sketchbooks that accept the pen and ink.
So these are great. Yeah, I love these. So now Moleskine has come out with a watercolor sketchbook in the portrait format, which I like. I don't like when books go this way and they're bound on this side and they're long. For some reason, I love doing landscapes in them, but when I'm thinking about a book, I like the book to open this way. For me, it's just like a thing. So Moleskine has come up with a watercolor book that's like this. This is really nice watercolor paper, but this is handbook journal, and it says Global Art Materials, but I think Blitz Art Supplies has actually, or Speedball, one of them has bought this brand and started making them. Now they're actually easier to find. But it's the handbook sketchbooks. It comes with a wrap on it with a drawing of a guy. I don't have a new one to show you that. And it's not super heavy paper, but it's nice off-white, and it takes the pen and ink really nice. It has just a slight tooth, and it takes the watercolor actually very well. I mean, if you go totally like super wet, it doesn't work, but I really like them. It has a little pocket in the back. Oh, look, treasures. We love finding treasures in the back of our sketchbook. I totally forgot these were here. So my wife and I actually went to, look, Chris, I found the patch. We went to the Lake District where Beatrix Potter painted and drew, and we're so inspired and worked on Whiskers Hollow. Windermere is one of the Lake Districts, and this little patch that I got, this is a little, originally, all the characters were going to ride a ferry boat, and so I made little Whiskers Hollow ferry boat passes. I actually sent one to my editor. The story's since changed because we wanted them to go on more of an adventure. This is just a random ink swab. I love finding treasures in the back of those pockets. And it's nice. It has a pocket. It has a bookmark, these sketchbooks, and it has an elastic. The elastic seems to last pretty well. Oh, actually, you can see one of them didn't. One of them I cut off, and this was something I found in a Japanese bookstore. It clips on and then has the elastic, because I really do like the elastic, and I wind up putting things underneath there and stuff. So, you know, every once in a while you get one that the elastic doesn't last on, but mostly you can see these have all survived. This is an interesting page because I'm doing just the simple shapes that represent each character, which is really important to think about the silhouettes of characters when you're drawing them and breaking them down into shapes and things. This is then outside. This actually might have been here at Highlights, painting some of the trees. Yes, this was here. Or no, I'm sorry, this is Central Park. There's a tree like that in Central Park. Go look for it. If you find it, let me. So anyway, so there's lots of things in here. Doing the type for the book. I hand do the type for the book, so that's always a fun thing for me to figure out. And it just kind of gives the whole feel. This was used in the map on the end pages. And then just drawing the characters, doing things helps you, you know, get into that, you know, who they are and stuff. So I thought we'd start and do a finished illustration from start to finish, but what it always starts out with is a sketch. So I did these yesterday here. There's going to be a I'm hoping we're working on a proposal for a second Whiskers Hollow book. And I'm hoping it's about how characters deal with obstacles in life. And so the obstacle will be a toll run by a grumpy old billy goat. There he is. And so they have to pay the toll, and some of them can't pay, so one of them might go home because he gives up. And that's okay. Sometimes you hit an obstacle and you give up and you choose a different path. And some of them might pay, and some of them might find more creative ways around the toll or other ways to go in life, but they're all going to try to get to the picnic and so on and so forth. So we have this little billy goat, and we have a little, let's see if I can find it. We have a little toll booth that's in a giant acorn, so we'll try to do that. And I thought maybe Rabbit would be in his, I think I marked it on one of these, his little yellow car. No, it's not that one. This one. His little yellow car. There we go. What? All your sketchbooks are green. Yes, for Whiskers Hollow. So these come in green, blue, red, and black. And for Whiskers Hollow, I kept them all green. And then but I have them in other colors for other books. But I tried to keep Whiskers Hollow all green. But you have a choice. So we start with a sketch, start with an idea, and then I usually start with tracing paper. You youngins know what tracing paper is? So tracing paper is magical because I have a piece that I just took out of this pad. You can see through it. See, so if I have a drawing, I can see through it. So we can use multiple pieces to get the drawing just the way we want. I mean, honestly, I always practice in my sketchbooks just drawing directly with pen, and we'll talk about pens when we get to inking. So this was just drawn directly with pen. I didn't pencil this first, anything that you saw in most of these. Sometimes if I'm trying to work on the characters, I will pencil first because I'm really trying to get the character the way that I want it, and I want to be able to change things before I ink it in a sketchbook. But 95% of sketchbook work is directly with pen. So this is directly with pen. So, but we'll start with pencil. And so we have a nice kind of, I love the Blackman pencils, but it doesn't matter. Any pencil will do. Us artists, we get caught up in our tools, but really, and I'll be talking about fountain pens, but I mean, my Trucks Go and Trains Go books were all drawn with a stick that I carved into a point and dipped into ink. So you don't need fancy equipment to do any of this. It's become a hobby for me. So here already, I kind of want to make this more of a mountain, and I want to make the acorn toll booth a little bit bigger. So I think I'm going to take another piece and just lay it on top instead of like erasing that and everything. We then take another piece of tracing. I think if we start with this, see, so I can move this around and use this. And then you'll see we're working on a light box. When we go to ink, the most important part of the story, we want to make sure that Billy Goat, I want Billy Goat to be sitting on the roof and he's waiting for his toll collection to come. So from practicing so much, I'm kind of good at just drawing these trees. Trees are great because you can kind of make them grow however you want in your book to fit the story. So that's great. When you're building a building, you kind of have to follow certain architectural rules and things. So if he's sitting here, his sign. I haven't decided if this sign should be a stop sign or just a toll sign. So we're starting to figure this out. Yeah, so the rocks will go further down. And then I like seeing the root of this tree. It's funny with books, sometimes there's certain things that, because I'm just thinking about the book, I'll draw over and over again for certain books. So like for this, it was like tree stumps and cars and stuff, And it wasn't necessarily a car that was going to be in the book or a tree stump that was going to be in the book. but it just helped me think about the story and be in the story. Because sometimes you're still working on what you want the story to be. So here again, this is why the tracing paper is good. I definitely want to move this back because I want a car here, and I feel like it's going to be too crowded. So let me see another piece of tracing paper. Sometimes I'll erase, sometimes I'll just use another piece of tracing paper. It all depends on how I feel and how much of the drawing I'm really digging at the time, you know, and I don't want to change it. Water. So we have this now, and then seeing this, I get to redraw this. So I really think he should be kind of leaning up against the little twig part of the acorn. Definitely have a little window. Should have a little toll sign here. And I like to, the pencil, Blackwing makes this great sharpener, and it has 1 or 2, and 1 gives you this really blunt point. You do 2 to get it sharp. I actually like to use the blunt point, especially at this phase, so I'm not, like I was just saying, oh, I want to draw his eyes. It's like, it's too early to do that. Like, you just want the basic shapes right now, you know? So I make sure I use the blunt point so that I can't actually, you know, get caught up in these details. Because that's my favorite part, is all these details and everything. So now I can move him over. Okay. I'm kind of moving things around, see where I want them, you know. Have Rabbit's car here. I haven't decided if Rabbit's going to be kind of frustrated to have to pay the toll, or if he's just going to be handing him some, you know, they pay in acorns, 5 acorns to pay the toll. So we figured that out. I designed a great coin purse. I'll go back to this and show you.
Can I ask what kind of pencil that is? I know you showed us the second one.
Sure, it's a Blackwing pencil, but they're nice and soft, and so they're really great. But you really don't need a number 2 pencil. It's fine, you know. We, like I said, us artists, we get caught up in the tools, you know, and you don't really need them. Like I said, I'll be talking about fountain pens, and you don't really need a fancy fountain pen. You can use a tip pen, and my Go books, all my Go books were drawn with a stick that I carved a point into and dipped into ink. All the black lines for those books, and then the rest was painted with the cheapest brush and the cheapest watercolor. So you don't really need, you know, the fountain pens became a hobby because honestly I needed something to work on. I bought old fountain pens and started fixing them up and realized how great they were to draw. And then we'll talk about ink. They came out with a waterproof ink that I could use, and so I realized I could really illustrate with these pens and everything. So I did. So it's become a hobby and a thing, you know, but don't think you need to. And I'll have some suggestions for, they have inexpensive pens that are very useful. So I need to have Rabbit here. I happen to have Rabbit's car. He's kind of got like a Saab wagon from, I like all these like 60s kind of cars. So. And you know, it depends like on the book, but how much I'll pencil and how much I want to just invent with the pen. And then there's a great video of Quentin Blake, because he uses the light box. So when we get to the light box, we'll talk even more about it. But and that you don't want to trace your pencil drawing. You want to be still drawing. You know, you want to see just enough of it so that you're still creating. Because otherwise, when you trace, it's like not you can just tell, that it's not the same. So, I'm just going to go back to this. I like this little patch of earth up there. I want to make sure I get that. I want to have that. Rock. So, like, these rocks, I know this is all I really need from the name of the tree. I can add knots and interesting things. The car, I probably want a little bit more detail. I definitely want to get the characters, in the way that Rabbit's going to be kind of hanging out here.
And so while it doesn't all fit completely on the screen, you can see Steve's got his two sketchbooks in front of him that he keeps referring to.
Yeah, so there's one here with Rabbit's car, and then there's this one of the kind of idea of the drawing that I wanted, but obviously this is so small we wouldn't really be able to enjoy the billy goat as much, so I'm just kind of doing that, so I have those that I'm looking at. They draw. So I'm thinking Rabbit can be, we'll have 5 acorns stacked up. So again, I'm using that really blunt pencil so that I don't get now, but I can go then and sharpen it and get a few little details in there. And now I'm gonna turn this page to have the billy goat drawn a little bit more. So I'm gonna look at him. He's got to have his hat on. So yeah, I might now sharpen just a little bit. So see how that made a point now.
And what's the name of that sharpener?
This is a black wing. It's the one with 2. They came out with one that just has 1, and it makes a nice point like this. But I still like the one with 2 because I like that blunt point for this, so that I don't get caught up in the details. But now I kind of need to really get this billy goat, and he's a new character. Like you can see, Rabbit, I drew pretty quickly because I've drawn him a lot. So I'll just erase a little bit here. I could lay another tracing paper on top, but sometimes then I get too many layers, too many things. And I'm just going to grab a white piece of paper so I can see a little better the details. There. So he's got his hat. It's going to be a little badge. Sure.
Colin is asking to talk a little more about the importance of silhouette shape. Objects that make the players.
Yes. So if you saw that, yeah, the silhouette is so important because if you have too many things, if you have, there's a famous, the Disney books, The Illusion of Life and stuff have great lessons about this. If you have, and the Priest and Blair animation books, if you have a character and he's holding something and it's here and he's pointing to it, and his body is, like this, if you silhouette that in, you can't see the thing that he's holding. Whereas if he's standing like this and holding it out, right? Maybe he's got his hands on his shoulders, I don't know. See, this is a much better silhouette because you can still see this thing, and this is the most important thing at this moment, for the story. So I'm kind of having trouble right now with the billy goat in that same thing. I want him sitting here. I want him holding his stop sign, and then so I'm thinking his other arm just needs to be at his side so that it doesn't confuse the issue. But yeah, that clarity in the characters and the shapes. Oh, Peter Sev is like a master at it, and I'm blanking on his name. Goodrich, I can't remember his first name, is a master at it too, and in creating creative silhouettes. Any of those animation books, when they have like the art of different movies and stuff, you can see a lot of great drawings like that. hopefully that answered the question. Another question. So here again, you know, that's going to be confusing with the leg behind there. So I want to switch the legs around and have the front leg up. That. And then this leg out. Have it split. And then, you know, like these characters are drawn in a certain way and a certain kind of silhouette, kind of like Alison Martin Provenson kind of did that. And so you come up with these like rules about how you're going to draw these certain characters, you know, and I was going to have a sign here, but I think that's going to confuse the issue. I think maybe we should just do.
You mentioned Peter, somebody in that for
Peter DeSez. And who did I say? I think it's Goodrich. Yeah. Did someone come in and correct me? Want a little sign here that it costs 5 acorns. So again, at this point, you know, it's great to do pencil because see, I would have made the sign too small. So and we have our little toll gate here. We'll have a little mechanicalness, a little skeleton, and then I guess we're going to do a stop sign. As you can see, I was trying to decide on designing the sign. Should it say stop or should it say 5 acorns toll? And honestly, usually when you're doing a children's book, any word, numbers would probably be okay, but words you would do on a separate sheet because they would want to swap them out if they use them into other languages. So you would just lay another piece over it and draw that for them. So looking at this and looking at my sketch, see if there's anything else. I wanted to try to do some moss. I'm not very good at doing moss, but it's a good time in your sketchbook to try these. I'm going to try to do some moss there with some like wet on wet watercolor. We have that. I think I'm pretty good with the way that rabbit looks in his car. I'll probably move his chin up a little bit so it's not touching the arm, but I can do that when I ink. Dye his face, a little tweaking, and then we're ready to go to ink. Any other questions? He's kind of a curmudgeon toll collector. I'm sure not all toll collectors are. A lot of them love their job. All right, so we have our little toll booth and our branch coming off. I know I can kind of play with the tree a little bit. I might bring this up just a little bit more, but I can do that thinking. This should come a little bit.
We are seeing comments that people are getting a real kick out of watching you draw.
Oh, great.
It's fun. Thank
so
you.
We have the tracing. We're pretty good. I'm going to take a sip of water. I'm going to move my sketchbooks up so that I have a little more room. I actually have the piece of paper, so of course I kind of got smudges on it. Hold on 1 second. Have to find a eraser with this. Usually I have a kneaded rubber eraser, but I actually forgot one. Because so this is the thing. Whenever I would ink a drawing, whenever I would go back and erase the pencil lines, I would smear the ink. I don't know why. I would make sure it was dry. I would wait the next day. It just never worked for me. And I said a light box would really be great. And my lovely wife, who's always so supportive, she said, you should get one that fits your whole desk. So your whole desk is a light box. And that's what we did. And it's incredible. Great. So so I have the tracing. Tracing is going to go under the watercolor paper. This is Strathmore Imperial. I really like this paper. It has just enough sizing. It's great to ink on. It's hot press. Pretty sure it's hot press. but their hot press isn't too smooth. Some hot press is like really smooth. This has a little bit of texture on it. Strathmore Imperial, it's not too expensive because some watercolor papers really can get pricey. And we're just going to tape this onto here. I have these wonderful things that I love. It's such a funny thing. Like I said, we get caught up in these things, but I love these. These are called drafting dots, and they're just little circles. They're little circles of masking tape, and they've changed my life because they're just so easy to like tape these things down. So we're just going to tape our, so we're going to turn on our light box. Are you ready? Let's see what it does to the camera. I don't know this one. There we go. So see, we can see the drawing just enough through the paper. Like I said, there's a great video, I'm sure if you Google Quentin Blake illustrating on a light box or something, and how he uses the light box, and how he says, I can see the drawing just enough. I don't want to be tracing. I want to be drawing fresh, anew. Keeps it fresh. It keeps it, alive. Okay. Now we're going to ink. So we have watercolor paper. I told you about that. And we're going to use a fast pen. Now, you can use a dip pen. Dip pens are great. They work great. They're really cheap. You can also use a brush and ink, which is great. I personally can never handle the brush. I need to feel the paper. You have to be so light and delicate. I'm not really that light and delicate. I don't know why. And so the pen, I like to feel the paper. I like a pen. But dip pens are kind of messy for me. I'm kind of a messy guy sometimes. So we use
that paper is.
I think it only comes in like 140. It's definitely not 300. So it's the size down. I think it's 140 is the next size. So you can see it's not too thick, but it's heavy enough. If I was really doing super wet on wet stuff, I would wet the paper first and let it dry and stretch it, But really, honestly, this is fine for me. You'll see, we'll do a sky that's kind of wet when we get to the watercolor, and it really won't buckle enough that it affects anything. So we're going to be using a fountain pen. Hold on, let me show you. So for this particular book, I have many pens. I have many different nibs. Each nib draws differently, and I love picking the right pen and nib for the book, for the way that book feels. I do use flex pens for some, like my book Swap was a flex pen. I used just a regular nib that was a broad line, and then you could flip the nib and get a thin line. That was for Have You Seen My Dragon? And this book I used, so I was very interested in these kind of nibs called Fude, F-U-D-E nibs, or bent nib. And you can see this is a really inexpensive one. There's a bend in the nib. Can you see it? Yeah. So you can see how it swoops up. This is a really sharp bend. And so I have a friend who repairs fountain pens, Richard Binder. He's amazing. He's since retired. But every once in a while when I have an idea for a pen, I talk to him about it. I said, I like these, and I like the kind of, and he also did a condor nib, which is bent the other way. But then you have to hold the pen very upright to get that thick line. And so my wife actually loves the condor nibs. She's actually getting hers to show you right now, and I will show that to you. Thanks, dear. See how that's bent the other way? So in order to get the thick line, let me just open one of my sketchbooks so we can scribble.
And before we go. Is it brand, or is it more find the pen?
Yes and no. So this is a Pelican M200, and this is the pens that Richard Binder usually worked on, and they're really great workhorse pens. They're built really strong. I'll show you. They have an ink. This is an ink view window. It's filled right now, so it's black. You twist this, and the plunger goes down. It fills. We're going to fill one, so I'll show you. And it fills up the barrel with ink. They're just really strong. You can twist out the nibs and replace them. So if anything ever happens, or you want to change the nibs, you can. And they're not super expensive, they're not super cheap either, but they're, you know, at a price that, so this is the Condor, and you can see, you can get, there we go. You can get that brush, scraggly line that I call, but you have to kind of hold it more upright, and then you can draw this way. So I said to Richard, I said, you know, I like the few nibs, but if it was just not quite so much, I could change, here, this one has ink in it. I could change the angle more while I'm drawing and get, you know, a really thick line like that. I can hold it more upright and get a little bit thinner line. I can even hold it really upright and get, and then I can flip it and get a really thin line. So that's been really useful to me, and just, it was just more agile for the way that I draw. Christine uses this one, and it works great for her because it's more the way she draws. You know, so it's all like experimenting too and seeing what works for you. But honestly, these are great, and this is like literally a $3 pen, and then I got the nibs separately and put them in, but they sell for about $8. If you go to Amazon and put in bent nib fountain pen, they're $8 to $12, and they're really good. I bought one and tried it because I wanted to recommend it to a class, and they're really great, and you can get a lot of line variation with them, and they're well built, and I haven't had any of them die on me. I think I had one, like this part fell off, but honestly, for how cheap they are, you know, you can't be too upset. So, so that's that. Should we fill a pen? Oh, so this is the fountain pen. This is a Pelican. It's basically the same pen. It's just got another number because the ends are rounded and this one's flat. It doesn't really matter. It's all just aesthetic. But this is green, so I wanted to use it for Whiskers Hollow because we love pens. Anyway, so this is Inkview window. I don't know if I put it maybe on the light box. You guys see? You see in there? No,
Just barely.
Just barely. It's a little dirty. Oh no, actually there's some ink in there, that's why. I didn't clean this all the way. But then you twist this knob here, and a plunger goes down, and you put it in the ink, and you twist it the other way, and it sucks up the ink. Should we try to do that, or is that not worth showing them? We can try it. So the ink that has changed my life. Keep going, do it? Okay. I'm going to run out of time. Okay. So we're not going to fill a pen, but we'll talk about the ink, because that's kind of important. This is platinum carbon black ink. It is, it's changed my life. It's waterproof in fountain pens. I do clean my pens very often, and I try to clean them in between fills, but if I'm in the middle of an illustration, you know, I want to finish the illustration, so I'll just fill it again. It's made by Platinum is the company. It's carbon black ink. It's nanoparticles of carbon, which is great. Carbon is everything in the world is made of carbon. And so you're making your art out of carbon. And because it's little particles, if you do leave it in the pen and it does clog, you can put your nib and stuff in an ultrasonic cleaner and all those particles should come apart, as opposed to the dye inks that are waterproof that they say are safe for fountain pens. Sometimes they'll dissolve your plastic parts of your pen and stuff, and it's just, this I've never had any trouble with. I've never had any clogging or anything. I have left pens in longer than I should, and they've still been okay after I've cleaned them and stuff, so that's that. Okay, we're going to start inking. I need another little sip of water. Okay, what is the time?
45 minutes in.
Okay, great. So we'll ink. Maybe we'll take a break before we watercolor. We'll see. So we're going to start inking. I usually start with the important parts first, because if you mess those up, then you start again. One other thing. I know I get this asked a lot. And Chris, do you mind there's an extra piece of watercolor paper over there? Or just rip off the bigger sheet, because that's the same paper. Yeah, just rip off that, like, corner. No, just rip off that corner there, because this is a different kind of paper. So I get this asked a lot. What happens if you make mistakes? Because I don't do anything digitally. I can't correct it digitally. So this ink is great. And so I'm going to draw a few lines here. We're going to let it dry so we make sure that it, and honestly, most of my mistakes are because I smear it because I never remember to draw from one corner down. I just draw what is important to me, and half the time I put my hand through it. I do use now a heat gun. It's a Crafter's embossing gun. I like it better because it doesn't blow as hard as a hairdryer, and I use that to dry the ink when I really need to watercolor it right away or ink another part that I'm worried that I'm going to smear. So we're going to leave this just for a few minutes to dry, and then I'll show you how I fix the mistake. It's not perfect, but it works for the little mistakes that I have. So I'm going to start inking our billy goat. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm like, I put my glasses up and I'm like this close because I love to be in that world. That's my joy, is when I'm like really just escaping into this world that I'm creating. The way the world is going on helps. And so now you see I did that outline with the nib this way. I'm going to flip the nib to the thinner line to draw his eyes. I can get those thinner lines there. You can go back and add some for that got his little badge. He's very official. He's very important. And full boost. And again, I can just see the drawing. I can see it enough. And that's why practicing in your sketchbook is such an important tool to an illustrator. Practicing with the pen, or like I said, with the watercolor, because I wanted to do the watercolor in the sketchbook, has just helped so much.
Oh, great. How's that, Molly?
I love that he's in his official gear, but he's like lounging like nobody gets by me.
That's funny. Not to distract you, but your friend Kelly Light is here talking about laser guns.
Laser guns? What are we talking about? Laser guns, Kelly?
I don't know. She just said laser gun. Maybe it was inspired by something you're talking about as your drawing.
Oh.
Maybe it was your drawing device.
Oh. I don't know. Ask her again. Kelly, please, we need more information. Kelly is a master at character design. So I flipped the nib. I'm doing some thinner lines around there. You know, little details like the little bolts that would hold the thing on there are always nice. I love little details and little mechanical things to add. You know, the little buttons on his jacket and stuff. You know. So you see how I can get those different lines. I can get the thin lines, and the thick lines.
Can you talk a little bit about size while you're doing this? We had some questions. Is this a full spread? Is this the size you
so just for this is the size that fits on the camera that we're using. So I work 100% full size. So whatever I'm drawing is going to be the page that's in the book. And I usually do 2-page spreads at a time, but you know, if we have spots, I'll do the spots sometimes separately. But like the Wobbly Bridge in Road Trip, that piece is that actual size. And what I do you mind grabbing the template? I grabbed the wrong template, so I wasn't going to show you, but I'll show you now. For me, it's all about being efficient to getting to the point where I can just sit down and draw. So I don't know if you can see this, but this is just a piece of cardboard that I cut out. It's my template. It's the exact trim size, so it has a 1/4 inch around it extra. It's the trim size of a 2-page spread, and you can see I have a little middle mark, the gutter. Sometimes I even mark a half an inch in, so I know not to draw in the gutter. And I can just lay this on a piece. I cut all my paper to size. I lay this down on the piece of paper. I trace out this template. I mark the middle lines. I take a ruler and draw the middle line, the gutter, and then I'm ready to go. And I'm not trying to like, oh, what's my trim size, getting a ruler, measuring each time. I do it once, I do that template, and I can move, you know? Little things like that really, you know, I teach full-time 3-year-olds, so when I sit down to work on something, I need to be really efficient about it. And if you've ever seen one of my studio tours, you'll know that my studio is basically a closet, and but Barbara McClintock said to me, she goes, no, that's how you want it. You want it like a pilot's cockpit. And it is. I can sit and reach everything, and I'm very efficient, so that's good. So that made me feel better, because I was dreaming of having a bigger studio, and she made me feel much better. And so I'll set up something the night before. I'll have the piece of paper. I'll have the tracing underneath. I'll do the template, and everything will be ready to go, so when I wake up, I can just sit down and draw. So now I'm using that scraggly line to get around here. I'm going to actually move this up. Sometimes I would move the tracing underneath, but I think I'm going to give myself enough confidence to say that I can do it. The tracing underneath. I just love this number 5. You ever seen that painting, the number 5? I forget who did it. In a minute. And again, this is still an idea for a character in the next book, so, you know, things might change. This would be nice if it was like more of a arched window. So you can see, like, you know, I'm using the tracing, but I'm making changes as I go, you know, and that's just getting comfortable drawing in your sketchbook the characters and using the pen and everything. And again, this might have been a little different for me if this was before I did the finished art to Road Trip. This is also now, I've drawn these characters for a whole book and 6 sketchbooks, so I'm very comfortable in the style, in the world, like, you know, the strange rules that I create for these worlds, you know. And so now I don't want this quite so thin, but I wanted a thinner line, so I'm going to hold the pen more upright. Draw our little scallopy things on our...
Number 5.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say futurism. But see, I wasn't quite so confident to say it was a futurist painting. Can you say the name one more time for me? Charles Demuth did the number 5 painting that I'm talking about. That's in the Met. It's a wonderful thing. Now I'm going to flip and see. Now this is how you learn. See, I made a mistake because his leg is up here. So I have to make decisions, and this is by drawing in my sketchbook. I've learned, and also this style with this big, thick line, I can go kind of thicken that a little bit, and I can thicken his leg underneath there, but I still want to be able to see his shoe, so it'll be okay. Oh, so let me just finish here. How are we doing on time?
About an hour.
Okay. The watercolor, unless I just think part of it and watercolor part of it. but I did want to show them for the mistakes if we go back to this, this piece. So, if we have a mistake like this and I want to remove it, the tools that I use are an X-Acto blade. This just happens to be a retractable one because I was traveling and it was easier to carry. I couldn't find the cap to my X-Acto blade. And different kinds of eraser. Oh, I found my kneaded rubber eraser. Tough Stuff eraser stick. Good stuff. I like it. This one, Hyper Eraser. Ooh, they really know how to brand this stuff, don't they? But it's really good. But I just found this one, and this was at Dick Blick, so this one might be harder to find. Sand Eraser, Mono by Tombo. And this is basically the same stuff. Actually, I think this might be a little bit rougher than this one, than the Hyper Eraser. The Hyper Eraser is actually what I usually use. But since this ink is carbon particles they're just sitting on top of the paper, and since this is watercolor paper and its size, we really can kind of scrape them off. Now, it'll change the texture of the paper underneath. So when we go to watercolor, that's the thing we have to decide. How much is it going to change the paper underneath that when we watercolor? Are we going to notice it, or can we do things when we watercolor to like just be conscious of it and make it work, you know? I'm just doing that little line right now. I would do about that much with that. Then I would do the Hyper Eraser next. You can see it's almost gone. And then I would just, the Tough Eraser is not, it's just really those white erasers that they sell. It's just more convenient in this smaller size for me. And that just kind of like, I think if it is like sandpaper, if you were sanding a piece of wood, you know, you have the really rough, the knife, and then you have the little bit still rough but sandpaper, and then the really fine sandpaper. You're just kind of smoothing out that area. And so it's pretty much gone. You know, it's not bad. And honestly, if it was just a little mark at this point, you know, if it was something like that and not too big, I can ask my art director, do you mind just removing that little splotch or something, you know? But every once in a while they bother me and I want to remove it so I can see it. But that's how I remove an ink mistake. If it's a huge thing, and I'll just redraw. But little faux pas of ink we can do that way. I feel like this gate needs like some kind of mechanics attached to it to make it feel like it's working. I'll have to look up the mechanics of the toll booth gate for research. There we go. Not bad, toll booth. And then we got to draw this branch. Nestling it. So it's all about, you know, the lines, the different kinds of lines and textures that you can give to a drawing, you know. It's not about drawing everything the same way with the same line. The more texture, line, and variation that you can give gives, you know, life to the drawing, you know. This is done in a certain style with this scraggly line, but, you know, to do that. So see, I'm sure I'm going to smear some of this, but I'm trying to be more conscious of it because we just talked about it. And you see, I'm using, this is really low, so I'm using it really low, and that gives me the thickest line that I can get with this pen, and sometimes I even go back and make that line thicker, especially for the trees, you know. The angle of the pen is touching the paper, yes. The angle that the nib is touching the paper. Maybe I can do it on this. I'll show you how. Here we go. That. Okay. So, if I hold this nib like this, it's a much thinner line. Like this is a medium line, like what I drew the goat in it, and then if I do it really low, like that, most of the nib is touching to make a really thick line. If I flip the nib like this, then I get a really thin line, okay? Because I know you're looking down, you're not really seeing that, how I'm changing the angles of the pen as I'm drawing. So that's just, you know, that's just practice with this nib in my sketchbook and everything, and figuring out what the tool can do, you know. And it really does, you can really get some nice, like, brush-like effects, which I love brush drawing. But again, I just don't, I need to feel the paper underneath, so the brush, too light of a touch for me. And that's just a personal thing, you know, not, a lot of people do such wonderful things with pen and brush. All right, so, well, let's finish the tree, and then we'll do rabbit. How are you thinking for time as far as, how much time do you have?
So it's 11, we've been at this about an hour.
Oh.
I'd like to take it another 30 minutes to talk. We've had
So,
a couple of questions about the recording. Yes, we are recording, and we will post this probably Monday or Tuesday, so if you're not able to stick around for the whole thing, or if you want to go back and watch that, that will be available on Highlight Foundation.
so do you want to maybe ask them, do they want me to keep inking, or would they like me to do a little watercolor, because I can like just ink rabbit and watercolor them, and the tree won't have the bark drawn on it. And, you know, if I was going to draw the bark, I would switch to the thinner line like this. So if you guys want to leave some comments, do you want to see me keep inking, and kind of we have time? I didn't realize it would take me so long. I'm talking too, you know. I can keep inking, and we'll probably get this inked then, or I can stop ink rabbit in his car and just paint maybe the sky. And I mean, it's really
Lots of calls for watercolors.
Oh, okay, all right. I was like, yeah, watercolors, just filling in line. No, we'll do watercolor. Okay, so let me just do these rocks quickly. This is not finished. Okay, I do want some rocks down there. Then I'll basically have what I have in my pencil sketch underneath. So if I want to do it without a light box. We want to hang this in the cabin. Okay, so like down here, I would be drawing this whole bark. I would be drawing the textures of the rocks. I would be drawing little rocks and grass here, but we're going to concentrate up here. So we're going to do rabbit. We're going to ink rabbit, and then we're going to watercolor. All right. Sometimes I start with the tires, sometimes I start with front window. And again, I let myself invent, unless it's something that has to stay. That's the thing with children's books, you know, here, from page to page, your character can't change, you know. That's why you do these character sheets and you refer to them, and, you know, I have this up above me and stuff, and at home, you know, I have all their vehicles and stuff, and anything that has to be drawn over and over again, I have up there to refer to, you know, or I'll just print out, you know, if they're bigger drawings, I'll just print out. You know, sometimes I'll even finish a spread if I changed it from my sketches, but in the finish, and it's the first time I drew it, I'll take a picture on my phone and just print it out, and have that so that I refer to that, not the sketch that's in my sketchbook because I changed it, you know, because I was just in the moment. Said, oh, you know what, what's better? All right, grab it. Yeah, so I'm switching to the line part of the nib. And remember, I wanted to move the chin up that arm. I don't know about you guys, but I'm kind of having fun. All right, wait, I gotta do the right hand. I always draw the wrong hand for these things. There we go. The Acorn Economy, Whiskers Hollow, very complicated. I talked to my financial advisors to invest in Acorn, the Bitcoin. Just couldn't do it. That was a joke, everyone. Ha ha ha. Aren't I right? So I kind of gave him like, I don't know how I feel about paying for this. It's funny how much expression you can get. Just one little dot and one little line, you know. All right, so we'll finish inking this. Maybe just this branch underneath, and we'll watercolor. It's all fun. These acorns are probably a little too big for the currency acorns, but I kind of like that. I think that's funny. Like they have to carry around all these acorns to like pay for things. So again, I'm changing the angle constantly to get different line widths to draw different things, and you know, I've been drawing a long time now with this pen. So I'm used to it. You know, I don't even really think about it, so I'm trying to be conscious of it to tell you guys. See, I can use this. I can lower the angle and just fill that in so quickly, easily. It works for me. You know, you're gonna experiment. You're gonna see what works for you and the way, what kind of line you want for your book. You know. And again, dip pens are fantastic. I mean, that's what I used for years. The fountain pens became a hobby, something to work on. I wish I could work on an old car, but I live in Manhattan, so I don't have a garage. So the old fountain pens became a thing, you know, and so, fountain pens. But the dip pens work just as well. You'd probably go a little bit slower. I am about speed when I work. The way I was trained, because, you know. All right, pretty good here. I'm just going to draw some texture on your tree branch so we can watercolor the tree branch too, just because. Oh, well. And so the thing with watercolor is, and the reason I used to color a lot of my work with fountain pen inks, colored fountain pen inks, but they really don't hold up well. They fade very easily over time. And the reason I did that is because sometimes I would do the color and then draw over it. And with ink, because it sinks into the paper, it's great. But when you try to draw over watercolor, ink line can kind of feather and change and not be the same line, so you can kind of tell. So, so that's why it's great to have the watercolor ink, the waterproof ink, sorry, and do the drawing and then watercolor over that. So, I'll like go back and add some little splotches. I also, his car is way too nice for Whiskers Hollow, so I have to put some dents things in it. You know, they're driving the tree branches, guys. They're gonna bang up stuff, crash into it. All right, so we are ready to watercolor. Here we go. Let me put this there, this away. Switch to watercolor. Oh, yeah, so this thing has been great for the inking. Like I said, it's an embossing gun. You can use a hairdryer. Hairdryer, like, it blows harder, so it tends to move the watercolor. But I also started to use this to make sure that the ink lines are dry before I watercolor, because the platinum carbon, it makes beautiful patterns of black ink in water, but you don't want that for this. So. You don't have to do this if you wanted to just wait, you know. You just wait. Sorry, there's just one little thing. I just need a little something there. There we go. A little. We gotta make this acorn not so nice. Hold on. Not ready to watercolor. So, you know, I would probably add a little bit more here, but this should be good. Now I'm going to hit this with it. Let's try that. And it's quieter, too. Okay, let's talk watercolors. So this is my watercolor setup. It's Daniel Smith watercolors that I squeezed into pans and just let dry. Before I use them, I use a little spray bottle. I have a bigger one at home, but this is my travel one. And I'm just going to move this. And we just spray these. Just going to get them all ready to go. You can see my wife has made a beautiful color chart for me, so I know each of the colors. For each book, Christine and I sit down and decide the feel of the book, the story, the mood, what colors we want, and then we test different watercolors now and how they behave together. The Daniel Smith watercolors, first of all, if you squeeze them into a pan, they stay nicely in there. They don't crumble and stuff. So for the travel sets, they're great. But they kind of granulate and speckle, and certain colors mixing together have like multiple colors in them. And so I always say, like, their watercolor does most of the work, you know, especially when you start mixing different colors together. Let's talk brushes. Really, for me, I only need 3 brushes. I need a big squirrel mop brush, they're called. Honestly, I think they're making synthetic squirrel mop brushes that are just as good. You just need a big mop brush. You'll see when we do the sky, just to lay in a lot of water and a lot of color. And then, honestly, I spend the money for the Winsor & Newton Series 7 stable brushes. I think they're worth it. We take really good care of them. We wash them, we dry them and keep them nice. And they really will last you just really a lifetime. Sometimes the smaller ones wear out. You know, I've replaced those more, but like this is a big size 7. I've had one of them for years. This is the second one that I just bought. To have the second one, and there was a sale. But my original, and I still have a Winsor & Newton stable brush from my college days that is just as good because I clean it and take care of it. So I honestly think it's worth investing money. You really get a lot of control, and they hold a lot of water, and I really do feel the difference. That being said, lots of artists use the cheapest brush. I know Tony D. Tillerizi uses just, you know, he does more of a scrubbing kind of technique and uses not expensive brushes. You don't, you know, you'll test and see. A lot of the synthetic stables really are very well. You're not ready to go up the money just yet, but I do think it's worth investing in yourself and getting those brushes. So Here we go. Let's do a sky. I see I have a little bit of smudge there, so I'm just going to remove that. I need a rubber eraser. My fingers are just dirty. So, oh, and so for this, we're going to turn off the light box. We don't need that anymore, right? Yeah. All right. Whew. So now you can really see the drawing. It's always good to look at the inking with the light box off and seeing if you want to add anything. I'm sure I could, but we're going to just move forward with watercoloring. So I'm just going to take clear water in my mop brush, okay, and I'm just going to add it to the top here because we're going to do just like a cloudy sky or something. So we get we get the page nice and wet. And I'm going to mix some blue. And I am going to use the mop brush for this, and then I'll switch to the other brush. And I'm going to mix some gray.
This is asking about the size of the brushes, or those?
Yeah, so this is a size 10. I actually have a bigger one at home. I just brought this one. I guess it's like a size 12 or 14. It's like a really big one. But this one is good. Is really pretty good. It holds a lot of water. The Series 7 size 7 is really perfect. That's why it's called the Series 7, is because the size 7 brush, I forget what queen was doing watercolors and asked Winsor Newton to come up with just one brush that she could carry on location. And size 7 was the perfect brush for her, and that's why they call it the Series 7. And honestly, it's true. I'm like, I could really use this brush for everything. I could just do that wash just now with this brush, and it comes to such a point, and you wet it so you can see the point. It comes to such a point, I could really do the details with it, but sometimes I switch to a smaller brush. I really use this for almost 90% of what I do. I'm just gonna, so now I'm just adding in some of the gray. I forgot I had gray on the brush. I'm gonna actually add in the blue first. So really, I mean, those three brushes, I could do almost anything with those three brushes, so. I'm gonna add a little bit of gray. And then I mean, I don't know how much you guys know this stuff, but now I'm going to actually switch to that Series 7 brush because I like the way it can kind of pick up. And just a tissue crumpled up, if you just crumple a tissue, dab it in there, you get some great clouds, you know? Yeah, know that. I'm just going to soften the edge there a little bit. Now this also, the Daniel Smith colors, not all of them, but the ones that we've chosen, lift out really well on this paper. So it's kind of forgiving. It kind of gave me, because I was using the watercolor, it really gave me that, you know, I felt like I could lift out a color, you know. Once the watercolor is dry, you can take a wet brush and wet it and dab it with a tissue, wet it again, dab it, and pull out a color if you really need to. Okay. So I'm just going to paint the branch. I'm not going to paint the rest of the tree because, like I said, it's not as nice to draw on top of the watercolor because the watercolor pigment then is there and it changes kind of the feel of the paper. But just to paint it, to show you that I use a few different colors. Just going to mix.
We've got an awesome from Olive and Ivy.
Oh, hi, Olive and Ivy. Love you guys. Those are my nieces. So nice. So, hold on. Get a little bit of this. So we're going to paint, just going to lay in a color, and then I'm going to drop in a few other colors into this. A little light. So, see how I'm just like dropping in another color and not keeping it just a solid color, just gives a little more interest. Honestly, this branch color is not the right color because the acorn's gonna be kind of lightish color. But that's okay. You can go back and add another wash over that. I'm gonna actually go in I'm going to switch to the smaller brush now. Yeah. And the acorn.
Steve, a question. Do you work digitally at all, or do you do any digital touch-up?
I don't do any digital touch-up. Every once in a while, there's a little tweak that my art director will do. Like one time, I think in, have you seen my dragon, we changed the police officer because he was saying, were they all, yeah, they were all green lights, and he was saying stop, which I thought was funny, but they thought it would be confusing, so we made him change what he was signaling to.
What number is that brush you're using?
Oh, so this is a size, Series 7, size 3. See, I'm just adding another color that I mixed in there. I'm actually cleaning off my brush and just using the color that I just laid in because I felt like that was a little too intense, and I'm just kind of grabbing it and dragging it, the rest of it. So that's like a little, you know, I put it on and I was like, oh, that's too intense. I wanted lighter colors so you can see the ink line. So I cleaned off my brush and just brought in some water and just dragged it across there. And now I'm just going to drop in.
Can you add pen and ink over top of the watercolor?
You can, and I have, but I try not to because, like I said, the pigment on the paper changes the line a little bit and makes it kind of look different. Let's do a little.
Stephanie, are you mixing colors right now?
Yeah, I'm mixing right now. I'm going to just do a little splotch of color here, and then once it dries, we can draw over it and see how much it changes. Watch it; you won't even notice the difference. But you know, fanatical about it.
Are you testing in colors, or are you just going?
I'm just going for it only because I've used this palette before to do the whole road trip book, so I'm really familiar with it. But I will always have a little scrap piece next to me to test, to get my pen writing, to test out colors and stuff. For this particular thing, I'm pretty familiar with these colors, so I'm just kind of going for it. Like this yellow, I wasn't sure of, so I did go in. And
For the palette and the character colors separate from camera.
right, so the characters, I always pick separate colors for the characters, and I don't use them for the background and things so that their colors pop. I actually don't have that, so Rabbit's just going to use the background color. He won't mind. So actually, now I'm doing the orange for his. I want his car to be orange, and I am doing it on here because I don't want it to be too bright. That seems a little bright, so I want to just tone it down a little bit. A little blue, a little complementary color, you know. So I'm just kind of moving around because I kind of want that to dry before I paint the billy goat. And I haven't decided what color I want the sign, so I'm going over here. Sometimes we leave a little white, you know, just to let it breathe a little bit. It doesn't need to be filled in. And add a little red to that. Seems a little too, you know, carrots, rabbit, you get it. The orange thing. If you watch that Quentin Blake video, we'll have to find the link and share it, but he mixes on the same watercolor paper. Like, he doesn't have a palette. He has all the pans just glued to a piece of cardboard and labeled what colors they are, and he mixes on scraps of paper, the same paper that he uses. Like, that's where he mixes the color, which I thought was really interesting. I like going back and picking up colors, you know, so I don't know if that would. All right, we have to tackle our billy goat, pick out which blue we want for him. See, now here's where I would pick a separate blue, more of like a uniform blue, meaning a uniform you wear blue. That would be separate from this set to paint him, but we're just using what we have. I'm going to try not to paint stripes in his pants. Maybe we'll go back in and do those in yellow. Any other questions?
Do you have a few people who would be willing to watch you all day?
I should sell tickets.
I was thinking we could have you come back in July. We could.
That could be great. We would be very happy to come back. Oh, I'm kind of liking this. I'm liking Mr. Billy Goat now for this. Let's get a red for his sign. Yeah, again, too, these reds are, this red is muted because that's what I wanted for the background. I would have like a brighter red for his stop sign, you know, but we'll
How about now? Can you hear us now?
Can you hear us? Hello? Is anyone out there?
They can hear.
Anyone at all?
Sorry about that. I'm not sure how our phone hung up.
What color upholstery Rabbit would have in his car, honestly. But I think it's kind of grayed out, but I do a little gray in the tires just to fill in those white spots and kind of give it a little more weight there. Go back in with that same gray and just texture to this.
Well, that's funny. The sound is better. We were not using computer audio because we were afraid of our bandwidth.
Ah, you can hear me better now. Shall I sing? Well, I walked around the corner and I walked around the block and I walked right into a donut shop. Well, I scooped up a donut right out of the grease and I handed the lady a 5-cent piece. Well, she looked at the nickel and she looked at me and she said, "This nickel is no good, you see. There's a hole in the middle I can see right through." And I said, "There's a hole in your donut too. Thanks for the donut. Goodbye." That is a song I sing with the 3-year-olds I teach, if you were wondering. So here I'm just going back and adding some texture. I still don't know what color I want this sign, hence why it's white. Definitely needs a color.
Does the ink line give your watercolor any physical barrier, or are you just good at painting in the lines?
Thank you for saying that. I always feel like I'm really bad at painting in the lines because I'm like, oh, I missed the line right there. No, it does not give you. Now, I used to use a dip pen and I used to use a shellac-based ink, which I think only Sennelier makes anymore. But that like really sits because it's like an enamel shellac sits on the, and that used to give a little barrier, and I used to just like float watercolor into the lines. But I think they changed the formula. It's not quite the same anymore.
So we'll keep going for another 10 minutes or so.
Great.
But feel free for anyone who's got to run. Thank you for being a part of this with us. And I did want to make a quick shout out to Candlewick, who's been a great partner with us with Steve. They sent us a bunch of books for Steve's cabin. And so when you do come, if you get to stay in Steve's cabin, you'll have a whole bunch of his books in there for your bedtime reading.
Candlewick, my Candlewick family is just amazing. I love them. I love making books with them, and I feel very blessed to be part of Candlewick and now Highlights and just good things.
Talk a little bit about creating your palette of colors.
Christine, my wife, is great at the colors, and she helps me a lot. And we just kind of sit down and talk about. I talk about, after I sketch for a little while, I kind of have an idea of the mood and the feelings of, and I say what kind of colors I need. I definitely need a gray because there's going to be a cloudy sky, or I definitely need this color for the thorny tunnel or something, and she'll kind of help me curate the colors, and we'll try different ones. We'll experiment. We have a big color chart at home of we have boxes full of watercolors, and we'll pick them and I'll try them, and then sometimes some don't. I'll be like, oh, this blue is not working with the other colors, and we'll switch it out and everything until we get to the final thing. And it's actually one of my favorite things that we do together. And the way that she helps me. I mean, she helps me with all the books. She's a kindergarten teacher, so I always read the stories out loud to her as we're developing them and ask her about, do you think a character doing this, kids would respond? And, I teach the 3-year-olds, so I try to read it to them and see what they think and stuff too. But she really is a big part of developing these books. So yeah, that's the color curation that we go through. It's actually one of my favorite things. One of the color charts of Road Trip will actually be hanging in the cabin. So I think George got that framed, and it's going to be hanging there. So if you come and you stay in cabin 13, you'll get to see one of the, it's a bigger version of this. Actually has the colors written on underneath it. I have the bigger one usually on my wall, so I know what the colors are called and stuff, but this one I just keep there so I know where in the palette the colors are.
And Andrea is asking, do you just use transparent colors?
Yes, so it was really important to me for this that, I don't cover up the, so I was using Schmenke watercolors, which are great because they're really intense. And I thought, oh, that's great, the German in me and the German watercolor, but it was too strong. It would cover up the ink line. And so I don't know if all Daniel Smith watercolors are, but the ones that we picked especially because they are so transparent.
And your color palette is so cohesive, you limit the number of colors.
Yes. Yes, I always limit the number of colors. Too many colors, and I get confused. I mean, like my Trucks Go book were literally like, I think 4 colors for each book plus black. So I will always limit my colors so that they all go together on the page, and I don't have to worry about that. And then we have the character colors too. So.
And then remind us what size nib was on that Pelican pen.
So yes, it's a. This happens to be, once I clean the ink off, hold on, a B nib, but like I said, it's bent up by Richard Binder to make what he calls I'm not going to say it right, H-A-N-E, Han or Hain fewed, so half fewed nib, because it's not bent sharp like a fewed nib. So if you buy a broad nib on that pen, it's not going to draw like that. You need it customized, or you need to get a fewed, F-U-D-E nib, or a bent nib. If you go to Amazon and you put in bent nib fountain pen, there's like an all black one. It's like $8 or $12. And honestly, it's a great pen. I got it to tell a class and I used it, and you really, it'll draw a little bit differently, but you'll get you know, it working the way you need. I think we should do the one last thing that I want to do is just these little pine cone puffs, and I'm going to add clear water in first and then just drop the color in, hopefully. Not quite.
What do you send the full art to your publisher? Or-
Yes, we have to FedEx the full art, and I bite my nails until they tell me that it has arrived safely. It's very nerve-wracking. My first book, my editor used to live in Brooklyn, and I gave it to her to drive up to Candlewick. They're in Massachusetts, but now I do FedEx it, and knock on wood, we haven't had any problems. So it is a little nerve-wracking to have to do that. And now I'm just using a tissue to pull out just a little bit of this color so you can see the thing, but that'll give a nice soft edge there. There's just one last thing really for this part that I want to do. Just a little bit of a shadow or something underneath here. Just wanna... So as far as the part that we inked, we watercolored, that's pretty much done. The rest of the illustration, you know, I would have all the texture in the tree, and I would probably mix a big thing of one color and then one or two other colors before I started doing that. And I would just lay in that one color that I had a big puddle of, and then drop in the other color so that it would, you know, speckle. And the same with the rocks. I would maybe mix up a gray and then drop in other colors so that it's not one solid color like that. I might think about adding, like, you know, another color down here, either another blue or like an orange or yellow, like it's later in the day and sunsetting. You can see I smeared here. So should we remove that smear and then we'll call it a day? Is there any more questions why I do that? Or?
Well, Lisa's asking any reason why you don't use Winsor and Newton paints.
You know, for some reason, why? What? We started off using Winsor and Newton, and then I really liked the way the Daniel Smith like speckled. You can kind of, I don't know if you can see it on this, but you know, there's like a lot of like texture in there. And I just started to really like the way a lot of them reacted to each other, more the Daniel Smith than the Winsor and Newton, right?
Lucas watercolors are very cost effective and great colors.
Yeah, Lucas is good too, but Lucas is like the schmenky. They're really intense, and sometimes I would put the color on too strongly. So I stopped using those.
And Yuka is asking what gray you use.
Oh, yes. Oh my gosh, Christine will know. What is it? There's a few Daniel Smith grays. Neutral tint is good, but there's like two that are like magical. Do you have yours written on yours? Oh my gosh. Shadow Violet. I think one's Shadow Violet, which you think it would be more purpley, but it's just a gray with all these other colors into it. And then, I'm so sorry, I don't have these labeled. And so I can't remember the names, but I'm pretty sure Shadow Violet is one. Isn't there a Moon Glow or something? I think there's a Moon Glow. I mean, play with them. They really, I was always like, oh, a gray is a gray. But when you have those grays and then you add them to other colors to kind of like tone down some of the colors, they do these like really cool things. So I'm sorry, I don't know the exact ones. I'm pretty sure one's, what did I say now? Yeah. Shadow Violet, thank you. And one's Moon Glow or something. But then you have to be careful with Daniel Smith. Some of them are shimmery now. And so those will not reproduce well for finished illustration. So test and make sure. I bought one and I was like, oh, this is a great color. And then I was like, why is there like sparkles in my watercolor? And it wasn't a finished piece, it was in my sketchbook, so it didn't matter. But I was like, why are there sparkles in my watercolor? And it was because it was these, they have a name too, but he has these shimmery ones, so avoid those if you're doing illustration for reproduction.
We pulled up the color palette and it was Shadow Violet.
So Shadow Violet, yeah, is the one. It's really great. It's beautiful.
Let's stop.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everybody, for being with us. It's been fun to see friends, old and new, taking part in this. We certainly look forward to having you come visit us here at the Highlights Foundation Retreat Center or online. Thank you. Have a lovely Saturday. We will see you again.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much. Look for Road Trip. It's so much fun.